doing projects and programs that align to those frameworks. If you're an architect, you'll be a TOGAF. You'll know how to build buildings properly and design them. Right? If you're a security person, because everyone needs, banks especially, they need security. No foreigners there, right? Everybody knows the ISO 27002. Right? These are all frameworks to save us. Right? And a lot of what I do in my job, I'm kind of like, I can't be detailed in every single line item down here because I'm interested in where is my business? Where's my business overall in architecture, in operations, in project management and security? I want to see the overall view of the health of my business. COBIT is the way you can measure that. Right? That's linked to a standard called, loosely linked to a standard called ISO 38500, which tells you you're a good company. You know how to run IT. Right? Making sure that bad things don't happen. So, I'm now going to use the public internet. I'm going to use an Amazon. I'm going to use a Google. I'm going to use a Microsoft. What things do I need to think about? I call this the Jumbo Seafood experience. Now, I can say that in Singapore because we're all in Singapore, right? So everybody knows Jumbo. When I go to Hong Kong, the people look at, what's that? Oh, Jumbo Seafood. Very simple. Fish, happy, inside their company. Fish get scooped out, put into a different kind of water that's at 100 Celsius. Right? The fish is cooking. That's the potential danger of when you enter the internet. Right? When you put your things outside, if you don't take care, you end up in hot water. Right? Now, many of us have many of our services on the internet, and we trust it, and it's all okay. The only thing, as I say, is when you do that jump from outside of your company to something outside, look at how the security is done. Look at how the compliance, is the compliance, does it meet, if I'm a healthcare company and I put my data into Microsoft, am I still compliant? Or if that healthcare information gets replicated to a site in Malaysia or Thailand, is that compliant? Think about your compliance. Compliance equals trouble if you don't get it right. Your service level agreement. What happens if it breaks? What's my availability? Will that service be available to me for all the time? 100%? 99%? 98%? And what if the service goes down? Do I get any money back? Is there a contingency plan? What's my service level agreement with that supplier giving me that service? Now, things like Hotmail and Google Mail, I can't really complain very much because I don't pay any money for it. Right? So things you don't pay for money for, you can't complain about really, to be fair. Right? Someone gives you a free meal, you can't say, oh, that's disgusting. Right? Because it was free. Probably there's a reason why it was free, right? That's why it's disgusting. But essentially at the end of the day, you can't really complain about things you haven't paid for. But service level agreements are things that you paid for. Make sure you get the right service pack. Where is my data going? I talked about that earlier. Yeah. Some cloud providers, you might think your data's here, but it actually may live in a country that you don't particularly think is a good idea. Right? If you're a research and development company doing unique technology development here in Singapore, and it's replicated to China, is that a good thing? Right? So, data location, very important. And as I mentioned earlier, service availability. Making sure that, will it meet your requirements? Is it okay if the service is down over Christmas or when it's peak hours? All right. Things you need to think about. Here are the areas you need to investigate when you're doing your analysis. When you look at a cloud provider, when they come and say, here's the deal, I've got a great deal for you today, promotion, 2-for-1 deal, right? Put your services on my cloud. Yeah. These are the areas that you should be questioning those people that are offering you those services. How are they authenticating? How's the facility shared? Who's got the keys? Who's got the locks? Who are your operators? Because you know, the worst thing, or the worst areas of security compliance are usually about people, not the technology. It's usually people that steal things, people that are not happy with their companies, or not happy with their employer in general, and they'll just thumb drive something, or copy something, and move it somewhere else, or go to another company. Yeah? So operator, process, and trust, very important. Do I trust the people? Actually, I said I wouldn't talk about my company, Dell, but I will just briefly. I was reading through the compliance list of putting things into Dell data centers. And one of the tests is that everyone must be tested for drugs. That's kind of neat, right? You've got to have a drug test to make sure you're not taking drugs before you operate a data center. Right? or you haven't got an alcohol problem or a gambling problem. I don't know how they research that. But again, if you're putting your entire company, giving it to someone else, you need to know that. I like to know that my pilots flying my plane to Hong Kong next week, they haven't been drinking. Right? Pilot trust. Okay. Also important to know where your backups are going, how your particular data is being isolated. So let's imagine, even though I know the banks don't like cloud computing, let's imagine the Bank X and Bank Y, they're using the same cloud provider and their information gets mixed up. Oh, that's bad, right? You need to ensure how that data is being partitioned. There are lots of good guidelines. It's not a dark science. You can simply download lots of documents from the internet. There's a great one called the Cloud Security Alliance. You have templates you can download, lots of documents. There are lots of other people like ANISA, Cloud Computing Risk Assessment. There's so many documents now which you can become the security expert. You just download the document, do the checklist. The only question is making sure you understand the question you should be asking. Of course, that's the only important thing. But there's lots of support out there. It's not something that you can't get your hands around. Many, many different frameworks to help you analyze your security of your provider. So, when you're moving to the cloud, here's some things that I need you to think about. And remember, moving to the external cloud. If it's inside your company, who cares, right? But if you're giving it to outside, remember the Jumbo Seafood experience. Don't rush to push your things into the external cloud. Make a small proof of concept, test that it works. Check your business users, check with your auditors, check everyone is happy with what you're doing, remember? Making sure good things happen. Review it with people first. Involve your security auditors, that you're doing that. And do it up front. Don't do it and say to your security auditors or, oh, I finished my cloud project, now can you check it? Don't do that. Do it up front. Make sure you involve everybody. Don't do it after. Involve the legal people of your company. It's dangerous to put things out there. I'm not a legal specialist. I don't know what of my company should go to the internet. Right? You need to get support on that, at least to clear your name if anything goes wrong. Scrutinize your cloud provider's reputation. There's lots of things you can do. I've told you already how you can start to ask the right questions. If you're implementing cloud computing, in some big companies, there will be jobs that could be affected. If I've got email running in my company with Exchange servers, and there are 10 people involved in that on a global level, and I say, I'm going to move all the email out to Microsoft. It's all going to be through the web, or through Office 365. I've got 10 people now that are probably not going to have jobs. Right? So you need to think about how to manage the expectations, what that will mean to people's careers. Most companies, good companies, will try to think about new projects, new training, new things for those people to do. But I have been involved where actual people's jobs are being cut because of cloud computing. Right? I just don't want any of you to be part of the job cutting. I want you to be the heroes implementing the cloud computing, not the guys that are being affected in a bad way by it. Make sure you understand that governance model I talked about earlier. Please, please, if you do anything else out tonight, just remember the governance. Make sure that you've got good processes in place to check what you're doing. And make sure that you have good security practices in place. Not just the one time, but all the time. When you're planning it, when you're building it, when you're running it, and even when you're sundowning it. Remember, imagine you just stopped, I don't want to use that cloud provider anymore. How do I know that information I gave to my cloud provider will come back to me? That it hasn't been copied and sold to someone else. Right? Things you need to think about. Even in the sundown phase, you need to think about where is your information. So, getting pretty close to the end now. So, this is the journey as I see it. And that little red line there tells us about how much we've covered in cloud computing at a very high level today. There's nothing I can tell you in 60 minutes about cloud, just to give you the awareness, right? For you, all of you personally, and including me, this is still our journey to continue with, right? Hopefully we don't go into that cloud, because I've got a feeling my coffee might spill a bit if I get into that cloud, a bit of turbulence, but we stay outside of the danger zone of that. So things you need to think about, things you must put on your radar. That's kind of summary. Make sure that everything you do, there's a good business reason to do it, right? It has to have a good business outcome that matters to your company. Small things probably don't matter. Make sure you're doing the low-hanging fruit, the biggest things first, to get the investment that you're looking for that I talked about. Planning and preparing your organization, telling everybody how you're going to do cloud computing and setting people up expectations correctly. Make sure that you have a deeper understanding of those cloud types that I talked about. Because at the end of the day, you've got to make a decision. And the decision is on your shoulders. Right? And people will come back to you if you get it wrong. So make sure you have a good understanding of that. Make sure, and I call something here, plan the thinking big. So think about the vision 3 to 5 years away of what your company might look like. Because it will change. One thing you can be absolutely sure of is change. Right? Think of what it might look in 2, 3, 4, 5 years away and work back from that. Start with a small project to make sure it's valid and that it works. Right? So that's what I call think big, start small. Always important. I have another thing here which I call plan your transformation from a cost center into a partner value center. What does that mean? It's a nice, funny word. All I mean is try and get rid of the word IT department, because IT departments, you're just cost. You're the bad guys, right? You just cost money. And turn yourself into a value center, somewhere where the IT department is seen as something strategic inside your company, something of high value that brings new value, new creativity to your company, not just a cost. Look at the areas of security. I've talked about how you should look at that security. Whether you're doing private, and certainly if you're doing the public cloud, that's a real key hot one. Improve that governance that I talked about to protect your personal reputation in your company. And start developing how the public cloud will look. How can you start to use the public cloud? Because remember I talked about hybrid. It makes sense to start using things from the internet, clouds from the internet. It makes sense to use Salesforce.com, for example, for your customer relationship management. Yeah? It's a secure, proven service. Right? It's generally quite expensive to run your own customer relationship management. Right? So there are lots of kind of services, SaaS services out there, which you can use and start to leverage from the public internet. Even if you don't want to move your entire company to the external cloud, which definitely makes sense not to move everything to the... Unless perhaps you're a small company, if you're a medium-sized company or a large company, it probably makes no sense to give everything away. I do know companies that have done it, but I'm always a bit scared for them, so make sure that they should at least have a good contingency plan if they are going to move entirely to the public cloud. So this is really now what, as I summarize, these are the areas, I come back to that again. Make sure you understand the cloud computing. Make sure you have a good plan for your virtualization in your company. Make sure that your mobile technologies, your ideas and innovations, whether it's iPads, iPhones, Androids, near-field communications so that you can do payments. This is going to be our bread and butter, our futures around mobile communications. Make sure that the good things happen and the bad things don't on your IT management. And make sure that you figure out who your customers are going to be in the future, because those are the guys that pay your salary, no one else. So that's it for me. As I say here, when I look at Singapore from a people and a national perspective, there's actually unimaginable opportunities for a small country like Singapore to exploit the cloud. And if you look into many of the government initiatives here, you'll see that Singapore has no intention of being left behind in providing cloud services, not just for our own domestic market, but for international market as well. So for me, there's boundless opportunities here, which you can exploit. Lots of programs, lots of training that I really would like you to take advantage of. And whatever company you're from, whether you're having to implement or whether you're having to sell it, I just really wish you lots of luck in your cloud computing journey. I do hope I can see you as well at one of my special interest group meetings and join the Singapore Computer Society. And that's it from my side. I'll take questions after. Thank you. Now I need a drink. Any questions? I can...
5 minutes for question. Any questions?
I love Singapore because I can really put my Q&A time in as 0. And someone shocked me the other week. I had a question and I said, hang on, I'm in Singapore. Someone asked me a question. I'm sorry, you sit down. Can't do it. You sure? No questions. Did anything I say there make sense? Has it given you a certain different... Because if I listen to myself, I scare myself because the world is changing so quickly. And I have a family, I need a salary too, and I'm trying to climb the corporate ladder. And, you know, there are so many things that can take those opportunities away from you. You have to be ahead of the game here with this whole cloud computing thing. I assume you all got some IT background, so we're the guys that are under threat, right? Maybe the hedge fund guys or the guys making stuff, they're fine. But us IT people, we're really the guys that are under pressure. And our job's changing much faster than anyone else. I mean, when I joined like digital back in 1984, everything I seem to know has been thrown away. It's such a useless industry, the IT. I mean, you learn something and it was really cool and it was really hot, and then something new comes along and you just flush it away, right? Which is really annoying because in so many other jobs, like my wife, she's an accountant, she keeps that information forever, right? So everything she learns, she keeps. From the day she did it, from the day she doesn't do it. Right? In IT, throw it away, throw it away, throw it away. And that's getting faster and faster. Right? That's all the challenge. Sometimes I say to people, why are you even here? Why are you even bothering with IT? Right? Because it's a bit of a scary topic to be in. It's too late for me to change now. I can't become a mega trader making lots of money or anything like this anymore. My path is fixed, at least for the next 5 years. And then I don't know what happens after that once cloud becomes so commoditized. But we'll have to see. The world is changing quite quickly. The economics of China and India is changing the dynamics of the game. And us here in Singapore, we've got to do whatever we can to make sure we're the center of at least the center of the Asian universe as much as possible as a small island. So that was just my blurble comments that I just wanted to throw out there, because I know you're not going to ask me any questions. One question.
So, especially for those companies, I just wanted to understand what you see for those companies who have adopted some sort of public cloud, some workload, and those who have also done the in-house applications. So, what are the challenges those companies are facing now, or you envisage they would face in terms of having integration of public cloud and in-premise?
Okay, that's not a yes/no question, is it? Yeah. Okay. As I mentioned earlier, what you have to do is you have to say, what am I trying to achieve? What's the business here? Where am I trying to get to? What does my business asking me? Are they asking for more customers? Are they asking for more money? Are they asking for all these things? So for me, it's like, what applications? And it's all about applications, right? Nothing we do in IT is of any value unless there's an application. Because applications is what does the work, right? So for me, when I sit down, if I had my own company right now, I'd sit down, my sheet of paper, and I'd say, look at my landscape. What am I as a company? What applications do I run? Which ones make sense to put into an external cloud? Which ones make sense for me to keep inside? Yeah. And like a fingerprint, everyone's going to be a little bit different, right? There is no standard model, right? Everyone will have a different model. Some people will have more concerns. Again, every time I talk to a bank and I talk about public cloud computing, they say, stop talking now. They don't want to hear about it. All right? But if I talk to education, if I talk to government, it's a different scenario. They're saying, well, which applications could I put out there, yeah, to bring value to citizens? So it's, for me, is an assessment of your applications, right? That's where it kind of begins and ends. And all the other stuff that people try to sell you is interesting, but in the end of the day, it's only the applications that make you any money. We're all here because of some application else. Right? Just where we host it and who we give it to. And where will that data go that's linked to that application is obviously very important as well. So that's my approach. And for many small companies, they just say, I can't be bothered anymore to have a little computer room here. I'll just use everything from Singtel or from Microsoft or from Google, or I'll build up my servers in Amazon, for example. Yeah.
So my question was, so those who have done this have moved some applications on cloud and also have some applications in-house.
Yeah.
So
how they
face in integration?
Okay. Oh, okay. Sorry, I misunderstood. Okay. So here's a good example. Salesforce.com is where all your customers are in the cloud, on the internet. www.salesforce.com. All my customers, all my business there. I know their names, addresses, and what they buy. But my billing. Yeah, I have SAP. Okay, I'm going to be a big customer if I'm SAP because I've got lots of money, right? I might be using QuickBooks if I'm a bit cheaper. Okay, so my billing to my customers to collect the money, that's done in-house. Now, that's a classic example of hybrid, right? I've got my customers are registered on the internet and my billing is done here. So if my salesman sells something, for example, he might register that into Salesforce.com. I've just sold to company X 5 engines. Enters the order. That's in the cloud. So how's that going to generate an invoice? Or even look into the supply chain to see if I've got any engines in stock? So now what I need is integration between that external cloud and my internal system, my internal billing and supply chain. Right? There are a number of different methods. You can program by yourself using, I'm going to use technical stuff like SOAP, APIs, exposing APIs of Salesforce.com so that I can extract the information, bring those. So when something updates in Salesforce.com, something appears in my internal billing system that I can now check my supply chain to see if the product's in stock and then create the relevant invoice or give the customer the right date of ship. Yeah. So that's sort of kind of what I call the cloud integration. There are some products. IBM do a product. I think HP have a product. Dell have a product that allow clouds to talk to internal services. If you want to, you can just do it. If you're a great programmer, you can just do it all by yourself. Because all these cloud people, they expose their information somehow to you. If you pay them enough money, they'll somehow expose through a programming interface the information, like your customer names, your customer addresses, postcodes, line items ordered. So there are ways to, and that's actually one of the most fascinating areas right now is in that hybrid, is mixing up the cloud information with the internal information and getting them to work together. That's happening for hundreds of different companies. Dell, for example, is a company which does that. Everything is anyone who buys Dell, they're in Salesforce.com on the cloud. Right? You go to Dell today, buy a machine, that's now in the cloud. Right? But the billing information is not. The billing information and marketing information and business and intelligence information will be done in-house, will be extracted. Just to give you an example of how you mix the two together to get best value. As I say, some people don't like that model. Some people say, I do it all myself. Some people say, I mix it. And some people say, I give everything to the external cloud provider. Okay? And we'll see that trend as the years go by. And probably one day, I hate to think about it, but maybe one day, we have everything in the cloud. But when I see all these cyber attacks going everywhere, right, I start to worry a bit, and then I think, well, maybe people will still be a little bit shy. It's a bit like money, isn't it? Like, you put all your money in the bank, but will the bank be there tomorrow if there's a global crisis? Maybe I'll buy some gold and keep it at home. Buying gold and keeping it at home is your private cloud, right? Public cloud is buying gold on paper or buying into currency or shares. That's the only way I can think about it. Right? Should be there, should create value, right? Something like this. Hopefully that answers the question, right?
What you just explained is more like for software services, like software CRM is on the cloud, and the billing is, private cloud. So how about your own infrastructure? How about infrastructure and services? How do you separate between private and public?
Okay. I feel I need a whiteboard. So infrastructure as a service is simply saying, instead of me buying my own computer, right, I buy a virtual machine. I make it by myself, a virtual machine, infrastructure as a service, and give it to people through a self-service portal. Or I can go to the nice people at Amazon and with my credit card and buy a machine online. Right? Now, I can do something what I call cloud bursting. So there's a number of different approaches. So I can have my own machines in-house, and they provide enough capacity to do what I need to do on a daily basis. In the past, if I have a lot of customers or a new project, I may be tempted to go and buy some new computers and put them in my data center. But with the advent of the cloud, I may not have to. I may be able to just go to Amazon.com and order up a service online. Order me 5 new Xeon processors, quad-core, 16 gigs of RAM with 10 TBs of disk online. Here's my credit card number or my corporate card number. Right? And now I have all of that resource available already on the internet for me. That's also an infrastructure as a service. And I can copy my data that's relevant over onto that public cloud, and then people will be accessing that public cloud. So it could be a web end. For example, a lot of people quote the example where Christmas comes and everybody wants the new toy, right? Or everybody wants to buy the Apple 4S and they can't get access to it. Or Siri, right? No one can get Siri to work because you can't It can't honor the requests. That would be a perfect cloud bursting mixture of internal and external use of cloud, right? Where, oh God, Siri's not connecting, it's too busy. Okay, no problem, IT department can't buy new computers. We'll just burst it into the cloud, and the rest of the transactions will be done in the cloud to answer Siri's request. That would be a perfect example of what we call scaling up or cloud bursting out. And as soon as I've finished with that resource, because everyone's finished with Siri, they've got over the novelty of it, right? It scales back down again. That's why I talk about elasticity. So I don't need it anymore. It's something new's come along. Siri's not interesting anymore. Okay, fine. The cloud provider doesn't provide me that service. Just like a telephone bill, I pay less money, or I pay no money. Simple contract.
More questions?
Hi.
Hoping you could talk a little bit about cross-border data transfer issues. So when you cited the example of Japanese companies exporting the data to be stored in data centers in other countries, would they run into different complications?
Yes.
Specifically, perhaps, I don't know if you can divulge this information, but what kind of issues do you have to consider?
Okay. It's pretty straightforward. I mean, if you think about who you are today as your company, every one of us, we sit in a company somehow, right? And we somehow have customers, because somehow that's probably making us some money. And we have information about our customers. And those customers can also be hospitals. Patients are customers, right, of hospitals. So we have different compliances, different regulations. Okay? So American citizens, for example, no healthcare information about Americans can go out anywhere else. Right? That has to be hosted in the US. It cannot be replicated. It would be breaking US law if it's replicated to some other country. Right? So it's a bit like when I come to the airport and, like this is what I'm allowed to bring in as duty-free into Singapore and I have to declare all the items. It's no different with data. Data is value. Right? And depending on that data type depends on where you can take it. Right? And the problem with cloud in general is once you give it to somebody, how do you know where it's going after that? Right? I mean, I have no idea. When you give something to somebody, where does it go? And how can I control it? And the reality is you cannot. You have to trust. Same when I give my money to the bank. I mean, now they have this kind of Islamic banking, for example, that says, well, now I'll only invest in things that are in line with Islamic policy, right? So the Islamic banking kind of thing. So they'll only do like no interest, and we won't invest in tobacco. No, won't invest in alcohol things like this. Yeah. So they're all different regulation models. So you have to be very, very careful. And Japan and China in particular as well. It's interesting. China's extremely sensitive about all information coming out of China. Not even customer, can even just be parts or business information. Very, very sensitive. Be very careful. But have no real inbound problem. You can host all of Singapore healthcare system and research and development in China, no problem. But then you might have a problem with Singapore government. Right. So there are a number of challenges, but there's so many documents available. Each government has issued guidelines on its data protection. Each industry has issued regulations about how, like HIPAA, for example, the healthcare, SOX, Basel, PCI, they're all there available on the internet to download. It's kind of clear where you can and can't put your data. Right. Does that answer your question, Rabbi? It's lawyer talk, right? It's such a complicated matrix, but you can get the basics right. Yeah. Credit card information is also another very interesting one.
Yeah, I like the way you compare your money in the bank, the data, or your business in the cloud. But the one thing I need to mention that is money is that a symbol. It's only a symbol. It's no difference where you get this symbol from. But the data, the value inside the data is the content, the information inside. So once you put your own data into their cloud, then you have to take your risk that this kind of information, this content of the data will be exposed to other parties. So, okay, I'm quite unsure about the future of this cloud computing because many enterprise business are quite concerned about this exposure. So, do you have maybe make some? Do you have and foresee or can give some vision that whether this barrier can be removed in some near future or
Yeah.
hard to
It's all about trust, right? I don't know if I want all of my life savings and everything I have in one bank. You know, it's just about trust, right? And those people that trust and those people that are more doing calculated risk, they put more things into the external cloud. In the banking side, I mentioned it before, they're not so trusting. They've got lots of it's lethal in banking, and there's so many regulations that they simply won't do it. Yeah. So when we think about the future, there will be organizations which will definitely stay like this, right, for regulation purposes. Right? They just cannot be sure. I mean, the worst fear I always had about putting my information into the cloud was, imagine I run my entire business from it, right? My customer contacts, my billing information, my tax records, kind of pretty much everything that runs my business. And I give it to a cloud provider. Let's say cloud provider X down the street here. And he was a great guy. He had lots of money. He's doing good services. Everything's fine. Credit rating good. And then, I don't know, maybe he has a partnership problem, some breakup. Who knows? The company goes bust. The internet connections, what happens? You don't pay your bills, internet connection turned off. And here I am, sat in my web browser, waiting to get access to my applications, my email, my CRM, all these things. No answer. Ping, no answer. Right? And I phone up and say, okay, company's gone into receivership, creditors have to be paid, no service till. And then what do? You go down outside, you stand outside the door and, excuse me, what now? Can I have my data back? And no one will answer because it's all in, no one would have access to it until the creditor's paid off. It's a really serious scenario, right? And that's what I'm saying, you have to do your homework. And in that way, it is like money, because to me, my data is money. Money's important to me, data's important to me. Data is my money, right? So if I'm going to give it, it's like if I set up a small bank outside and said, Martin's Bank, would you come and put your money in there? All right, you'd want to know that I had a nice name like HSBC, ANZ, some big bank, right? Because we're looking for trust. Right? So the future, for me, the way I see the future, it's going to be completely mixed. One thing I will tell you is that there will be lots more use of external cloud to get the money cost down, where I'm happy to trust the provider and take the risk. So emails, for example, I foresee even the most untrusting companies will probably put their email into the cloud, but they may not put their customer information into the cloud. So it's a complete mix. One thing to be sure, everything's getting cheaper, the world is becoming more commoditized, the world's becoming more mobile. Behind that cloud will be a driving force. Yeah. So make sure we have our security right, and you do the Jumbo Seafood experience test. Right? Make sure that it's not hot water out there. And at the end of the day, just like putting your money into a bank, you can't, I'm sure Lehman Brothers or all these other banks, the Iceland Bank that went bust, sometimes just bad luck happens. Right? There's no guarantees in this world. And you just have to be responsible for that risk and make sure you did the right thing at the right time. And that's why the legal people backed you up and the security people backed you up in your decision. Right? Otherwise, you're standing there in front of the board of management. So what happened? Well, the cloud went down. Why? Well, that just happens sometimes. And did you put a plan in place to what happens if it goes down? No? Okay. Bye. Reality. Yep. Oh, one from the back.
From the other side, I'm from the sales side.
What are you selling?
I sell services.
You're a cloud selling person.
Sorry?
You sell clouds?
More or less, yeah.
Ah, good.
One of the services is cloud.
I should ask you.
There is one common objection which customer asks. I mean, over the period of 5 years, total cost of ownership versus buying the product on site is almost same. How do you actually handle this objection from a sales
Okay. So we're talking the supplier talk now, the TCO, the classic, is the customer going to get his money back? So remember there's two things. Yes, it's about money, but the other one's about agility. Remember the cow and the dolphin scenario that I talked about earlier, about the fact that I don't have a data center, the fact that I can move my business to a cheaper premises overnight and never need to move my data center. Those are agility costs, right? So many people, when they're doing their overall cost planning, they don't take into account agility. In fact, in general, most people are completely missing the chance to calculate agility into their business case, right? The abilities of things that I avoid by doing the cloud computing, right? So some people, and I've said this to many people, some people will come up with a business case that actually shows zero return. Their business case wasn't saving money. Their business case was changing the way they do their business, right? Being able to host different kinds of applications much faster, much more dynamically. Not having the headache of having HR looking after IT, going out, I'm very aware of the headhunters here, it costs you a lot of money to get a good IT person here in Singapore. These are all the agility, these are all the hidden costs, right? So a business case is really, really complicated, and you know this, right? So what I'm saying is, I've seen people that have a flat business case. For $1 they spend, they just get their dollar back. They don't really make progress. They change their way they do business with their customers, and they've got agility savings. And sometimes that's not easy to calculate. Japan is a great case. The people in Japan today are not moving, the people I spoke to in Japan, they're not moving because they think they'll save money. They're moving because they're worried about what's going to happen with the next tsunami or the next earthquake and how their business will survive after that. It's not so easy to put on a business case. One will have a different model. Some people have come out negative. You'll spend more money to put in a cloud than you actually get return. And some people that'll be okay. And that's the problem with the supplier world, is it's complicated because everyone comes to you with a different solution. And every day you open the paper of their documents and they've changed to a new version, or they've got another offering. Or a great example is like, Skype. Skype is the big telephone thing, right? And it's so big, got so many millions of users, it's hard to imagine that it can be being displaced. But right now there's new companies being formed. I forget the name. A company that's quickly coming up that's challenging Skype's dominance in the telco market. Yeah. So, just when you think you've got a business case and someone comes along and presents you another one, and you're standing there and we're going, what happened there? Right? Facebook, untouchable, right? And there we have now Google Plus doing all the same kind of things, right? And with even more capabilities inside. So, it's not just about the dollars alone, it's about the agility, the ability to capture the customers. And for me, that's the biggest impression I want. Businesses that I talk to, I'm interested in their business development. Where's their future? Not just about the savings. But the IT department, they're on the dollars, right? And I've got business cases that can show you savings, 10%, 20%, sometimes 30%. 30%, if you're saving 30 or 40%, they're probably not running their IT very well in the first place. Right? 0%ers, that's okay as long as they don't mind the agility aspect of it. And plus ones are always difficult to sell. Ones that cost you more money to implement, that's a difficult one to sell to your management. Right? But I'm doing it because the agility is important. I can't share those people, those names, those big people that we know, those household names, because I'm not allowed to, but maybe I could do it offline, a coffee, and talk to you about those kind of things. Cloud is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. It's going to be with us for the rest of our lives. As long as the internet's here, cloud will be here as well. Yeah. And more of it.
Murphy, I think